Good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is ChristianApologist.com, and I'm here with quite a few people from the Red Pill Group. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Max of the Red Pill Group because he's the one who started it, and he's going to share a little bit of information with you about it. So,
Oh,
Max?
all right. Well, thank you. Hi, I go by Max Kolbe. That is my professional working name. I am the founder of the Red Pill Religion Project. We were originally known as Escaping Atheism. We have changed the overall name to Red Pill Religion because we're branching out to talk about more than just atheism alone. We want to talk about human spirituality generally, and why it's rational to believe in things like the supernatural. In fact, here, I'll bring up a slide here. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but on Red Pill Religion, we like to say that we are dedicated to the proposition that belief in the supernatural and the transcendent is normal, healthy, rational, evidence-based. On our team, we have a number of people. Most of us are Christians, but most of us are what you would call Orthodox type Christians. In other words, most of us are Eastern Orthodox, Anglican, Catholic, some branches of Christianity that are more institutional driven by bishops, priests, etc. We also have a Gaelic pagan on the team. We have a non-believing atheist. We have non-Christian theists, and we generally take the position that some sort of religion is normal, healthy in humans, and healthy for society. And we want to see spirituality mainstreamed again so that people talk openly about their religion, their religious beliefs, and even other beliefs. If you're into reincarnation, if you're into New Age stuff, whatever, you shouldn't be shamed for that either. I mean, we can argue over what's healthy or not, but human spirituality is normal, and we're going to be doing a little politics as well. So that's it. And by the way, everybody from the team's not here, but this is a good roundup of people who are. So maybe other people want to introduce themselves?
Sure thing. This is Andrew Stratalites. I'm an Anglican, as Max introduced, and I'm a lot on Twitter. I tend to have a bit of a philosophy background, so you can see me getting in arguments or posting things there. And yeah, that's me.
And he's a big nerd.
Oh yeah, I'm a super nerd. I love role-playing games and video games and science and technology, and all sorts of stuff like that. So.
Who's next?
All right. How about John Baptiste?
Well, I'm John Baptiste. I'm probably one of the few people on the team that's never actually been an atheist. I've explored polytheism. I've actually explored Satanism, and I have there's a lot that I've studied. A lot, not all the theologies, obviously, but enough to get that. I'm Eastern Orthodox now, mainly because of I agree with a lot of the theology of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. But
Oda?
Hello. So I'm a Belgian, as I mentioned before. I live in Europe. I've seen my society shrink from a very thriving Catholic society to a secularized society. I'm someone who's very interested in everything related to religion, history, any trends. I'm a marketeer in my day job, so trends and how society evolves interests me a lot. I've been blogging in the Dutch language also for a conservative Catholic blog, where I also talk about different subjects related to secularism and religion. So I discovered Max Kolbe through his men's rights activities, and when I saw that he did something on atheism, I thought it was very interesting. So when he invited me to join, I did. So that's in a nutshell who I am.
I guess that's I'm next. My name is the Ghost of Buckley, but you can call me William. I did join I did join Escaping Atheism under the pen name Dominic Savio, and I will write that I want to be a blogger and write under that pen name Dominic Savio. Um, I've been on I've been a Twitter personality and activist for a little over a year now, ever since the summer of 2016. I've been active on Minds, and I run the Minds account for Red Pill Religion. And yeah, I'm very interested in politics and history. I am a history student at a university.
I guess I would add in, somebody mentioned my men's rights activity. Yeah, I used to be real well known by that under a different name. You'll find that under something called Red Pill Movie, which is part of the inspiration of why we're calling it Red Pill Religion, although it's not about everything this movie's about. A lot of the things we discuss and will be discussing, there's a rising tide of ethnic and civic nationalism, and there's a rising return of religion to public life across Europe. There's a return of religion, and especially Christianity, in China, and the secular order is something that we tend to be highly critical of, and until religious voices are included in the secular order again, we'll be critics of that. So that's a lot of what we'll be doing. So I think that's all I have. I'm not sure what else to say. But I wanted to mention other team members like our Gaelic pagan, Darmanic McMail, and Matt, our atheist, and Phil, and we got a few others I think I forgot. Oh, John Bosco, he's been doing blog work for us too. So we got a pretty big team, and we're hoping to keep growing. We also have a Discord chat room you can join and stuff like that. So
yeah,
there you go.
Max's Discord chat room is really wild.
So did you want to go ahead? Actually, let me ask the group here, and I'm not sure of this because I've seen it in the live chat. Is Eve going to be able to make it? Does anyone know if she's going to be able to show?
I couldn't. I have not heard from Eve in days. I tried a few times, and that is pretty typical for Professor Kaninen. Just ghosts out. So not sure what to tell you there.
To my knowledge, she has never actually been on a live stream because she is very worried about being doxxed. She lives in an area that's very liberal, very progressive, and if they ever found out that she was a Christian blogger, and a particularly sarcastic one at that, one that's offended a lot of people, she could lose her job.
Yeah, my reputation's already trashed, so I don't care.
Yeah, I've decided that too. I mean, I've decided that as well. I'm out there. Everyone knows who I am, so I'm not even going to try to hide. I don't really have a reason to hide. So,
well, most of us are anonymous for that very reason. We have reputations. We have lives outside of this. We believe the work we have is important, and I do plan one day on showing my real face and name, but but I don't see myself doing that anytime soon. Not until I get a good enough income. Not until I,
Sure.
Yeah, that's. I have a lot of plans.
That's going to be true for everybody, because I mean, you may notice we're all flying under saint names, or most of us do. And most of us are anonymous because there has actually been a concerted attempt by atheists to harass, dox, drive Christians offline. It's been going on for about 10 years now, and it's been very political, and it's been funded. And I can show that to anybody in the course of my investigative work over the last year and a half. Atheism is an organized cult movement. It is an organized cult movement, and they'll look at you you and say we have no beliefs, but then you can tick off 20 or 30 things they believe as a group. And this is something Penn Jillette had announced more than 10 years ago, because I heard him talking about it. It involved a number of other high-profile figures. It was a funded media campaign, and one of the things they were doing was psychologically destroying and spiritually attacking Christians so that they would just not be online. Noah Plum, one of the guys who was guilty of this, recently just admitted flat out in a stream that they did this. So we're actually fighting people, and they don't like it. But I honestly believe this organized movement, atheism, has had its back broken in the last year or so, in part due to our efforts. And that's one of the other reasons for the shift in our focus.
Well, also, it's this movement has had personality quarrels too over the years. Like, I think the elevator gate thing was a big part in its destruction in this organized atheist, the destruction of the organized atheist. I think also the really just all these personality fights, because these are a lot of people who are very political. They're very tied into their political ideologies, and they have a hard time amicably disagreeing with other people. And so when you combine all that together, it's really hard for them to form a cohesive group if they don't have a common enemy to pound on.
Right. So they make religion their enemy, and then if that's not working, they start tearing on each other. But Oda, weren't you saying that a lot of this, the secular order there in Europe where you are is getting pretty oppressive?
Yes, actually, it's about more than just religion. It's about your ideas. Any conservative, any person who actually distances him or herself from the mainstream is labeled, a right-winger. And as soon as you're a far-right person, even if you aren't, well, you're basically unemployable. So you can't show yourself. This is why I don't show myself, although I'm not a far-right person, far from it. I'm more towards the left. But, any conservative opinion is taboo. So if you say, for example, that you're against the sexual revolution, that's taboo. If you say that transgender people have mental problems, that's taboo. If you say that feminism is perhaps makes some mistakes, that's taboo. If you question Islam, well, then you might as well quit your job, because you can just, you can become perhaps a far-right politician, but you won't be able to be employed anymore. So it's more than just religion. It's an entire worldview that is actually attacking Christianity and everything it represents. So, and this has started since the 60s. So when people decided, and especially in Paris and in some larger cities, to question, traditional society, and as I explained in one of the previous Red Pill videos, and everyone started to follow the same paradigm, and it has had very disastrous results for our society. We have, for example, a divorce epidemic. We have a lot of people living together without being married, a lot of children out of wedlock, a lot of recomposed families, a lot of children that are no longer being raised properly, and this is destroying our society slowly. And then I'm not even talking about the consequences of the European Union, its open borders, its free migration, the competition from the Far East, from Eastern Europe, which actually threatens the economies in the West. And so as soon as you start questioning this entire lifestyle and this entire paradigm, you might as well leave the country. So, but more and more people are protesting this and against this, and but again, it's on the internet. It's within parties that aren't considered mainstream. So I think we'll still need to do a lot of work before certain ideas become acceptable to the press, to the mainstream press and mainstream politics.
And just sort of riffing off of that, the way I sort of got involved with this is back, 20 years ago, back when I first started on the internet and chatted with people and got into technology and sort of nerdiness in the United States, it was very much not a thing that you would have to deal with conflicts over spirituality or religion. But, 10 years ago now, starting, you couldn't really effectively be like a nerd or a technology person. And even like in a traditional spiritual tradition. You couldn't be like a practicer of Judaism or Christianity or these sort of deeper traditions without being bullied and harassed, especially online. And that just didn't seem culturally right to me, and so that's part of the reason why I'm sort of standing firm and drawing the sword, as in drawing the sword in like rhetoric and things a little bit more than has been sort of traditional in America with Christians, because Christians are supposed to be polite and all get along, and we might disagree on certain doctrinal issues, but that's sort of implied to do. And I feel like these political movements have sort of taken advantage of that and sort of weaponized our politeness and compassion against people that are a bit more traditional. And by traditional, I mean like being what would be considered a liberal in like the 1950s. So.
Hey, I see we have one of the cultists, Peter from Gonna Go For It, there in the comments, throwing out my legal name, even though he knows I work professionally under my Max Kolbe name and prefer my friends call it. My enemies call me by my legal name, so I guess Peter is an enemy. But I mean, he's one of these people that, for fun and profit and just to be vicious, goes around harassing people. And that's because they're a cult movement, and he's kind of a mini little cult leader. And he's just an example of what these people are like. In fact, the real genesis, I mean, the way Andrew and I worked, I do remember he had come on Twitter, and a guy named Steven we both saw on Twitter, he got harassed, and there was some atheists going back and forth, and I think they both left Twitter for a while, say it's just too hostile out there. And then I wrote him back and I said, hey, this is organized activity. Do you want to help me do anything about it? And, he did, and it's grown, and other people joined. I mean, we were really just an atheist attack squad. That's what we were, and still are to some extent, but that's kind of how it started, because of that hostility, and that hostility I find so unacceptable and creepy and cultist. I mean, when I was an atheist, I had a live and let live attitude. These people want to psychologically destroy you. And they have no reason for it except malevolence, and in some cases, it's a way to make money. But people need to know, Christians especially, but Jews and any other religion too. No, atheism is an organized movement, and it is a hate movement with a hate ideology behind it. It's got fake history, it's got fake science, and they bully people. They go around in gangs and bully people. And
yeah,
it's been going
If I recall, Peter specifically went after your son.
I don't remember if it was him, because there's so many of these creeps, and yes, we use that kind of language. With so many of these creeps, they've gone after my kid's stepbrother. They've gone after my ex-wife. Good thing she and I are good friends now, and she flipped them the bird. But I mean, these people are nasty. It's cult phenomenon. They really ought to be investigated for criminal activity in many cases. I truly think that. I don't know about Peter in specific there, who's being an obnoxious jerk as usual, but some of them, no question. They get paid. A lot of them appear to get paid in Bitcoin and other things under the table just to do social media hits on people, to harass them, mock them, psychologically break them down, that sort of thing. And, they make money selling their atheist books and their anti-Christian. It's especially an anti-Christian hate movement. It should just be acknowledged that's what it is. They hate Christianity, and they spread lies about Christianity. They spread fake history about Christianity. They spread fake stuff about science, and they run around in groups to harass and bully people. They're horrible. They need to stop. So there you go.
Yeah, and just sort of expanding on atheism as a cult, what it actually resembles the most is back 1 or 2 thousand years ago, there were these people called Gnostics. And the way that Gnosticism worked is there were basically a group of like gurus or teachers who had some of the same doctrinal ideas, and then they would have like an inner circle of true believers or their friends or whatever, who they'd all swap wives or share money that they got from donations, and then they would have these people on sort of the outskirts of these cults of personality, and people would flip between these individuals and sort of follow and eclectically grab some doctrines from one or another, and so on and so forth. So it's not like they're a mirror image of, say, like how a Christian church is organized with a hierarchy and things like that. But there is definitely sort of a network of these people that are ideologically sympathetic to each other and all going the same direction, and communicating with each other and organizing things and sort of helping each other out. So that's it. It's a network of like cults of personality, at least based on what I've personally observed.
Yes, but this is more than just a cult. This is just people harassing people who don't agree with them. I think you can have your ideas, but if you feel it's okay to go after children or after spouses, well, I'm sorry, but this is no longer an honest philosophical movement.
Well, it's really hard to call them. It was a politically driven movement from day one. Definitely, you can actually definitely point to the new atheist explosion. That was a concentrated media effort by people in the media to get these people's books out. They had like T.J. Kirk. T.J. Kirk is a big guy. He used to be called the Amazing Atheist. He has this big YouTube channel, and he mostly was releasing all this atheist stuff. And he
was part of the harassment brigade too. You go look for a guy named Brett Keane, everybody. And Stephanie, you really ought to invite Brett Keane on for an interview yourself sometime to talk about this topic. He will give you the eyewitness account of how organized atheism, just a vicious, malicious, malevolent movement to destroy people. He started out as one of them. And I don't think he knows how deep it goes, how, there was actual money behind it, which we do know now. But really, it was organized criminal activity. And I don't know how you would arrest them or round them up, but that's what happened. Yeah. Oh, and there's still an effort out there to smear his name. If you type Brett Keane's name in, you'll find all kinds of horrible garbage about it. But it's being maliciously spread by these skeptic network. Well, we call them the skeptic mafia. We're not the only one. I've talked to people, even heard from people who escaped the skeptic mafia, and how they would, change their mind and start thinking maybe there was a God, or being against religion was, not productive, and they would get turned on and they would get destroyed. Again, their reputation's trash. People calling them all hours of the night, trying to psych them out, using personal information they had on them. This has been serious, and I'm going to keep writing about it and talking about it and spreading word about it, because people need to know atheism is a cult network. It is. It's not even rhetoric on our part. Not that every atheist is a member of it, but they're easily sucked into it, because these people will lie about history, and then the innocent atheist who doesn't know any better believes the lie, like all the stuff, how we don't understand science and we don't understand evolution and we're stupid and we're primitive and all that crap. They get fed this line. And it's all nonsense, and it's part of a political agenda to wipe out Christianity. Truly, it is, and there is one. I don't think anybody can deny that anymore. I've seen John Baptiste has been wanting to say something.
Yes, along with everything that everybody said, that atheism has been doing that. Atheist.org is the website for the American Atheist Association, who has 170 affiliate organizations. According to their 2016 tax return that they give to the IRS, it has to be public, be Googled. They have no affiliates, but in 2016, the 170 affiliates was like, I think 168, and that was on their website. and they are in North America, in America itself. They are the ones who are essentially collecting all the atheist history, which was all written by activists in the early part of the American country. They were all activists. All the writers were activists. It was political.
Yeah,
They they
a whole lot of them Marxists.
they took all these writings and put it in a library in New Jersey, which I'm planning on one day going to. But they've also been co-opting from different spiritual backgrounds, like Satanism, Luciferianism. That those are left-handed paths, which mean they teach that a person can become a god or part of God. It all depends on which sect you want to go into. That's a different topic, but since before the atheist explosion happened, the new atheist explosion happened in the late 2000s and the early 2000s. There were atheists starting to co-opt the Satanists, the Luciferians, and other pagan groups, the New Age spirituality groups. Wicca was mostly feminists, but I've seen it. I've seen it over the past like 10 or 20 years of these groups, these people just going into these groups and changing them fundamentally. Like the whole, there's a lot of examples. Like with Wicca used to be more closer to the old pagan religions.
Oh my gosh. Let me even interrupt you. One of my interviews, we've interviewed him twice, is a guy named Autumn Storm. He is a pagan witch, and he's talked about what you're talking about there, John. Wicca, witchcraft being invaded by ideological atheists and fake Wicca, according to him.
Yes. They've made it. They went from there being a balance between men and women to being essentially goddess worship. That's what Wicca is now today. And then it's these little tiny groups that they're co-opting and changing, little things that fundamentally change things. It's kind of like how feminism has been trying to destroy Orthodox Judaism in multiple different ways with Reform Judaism, essentially. But yeah.
So yeah, this political atheism is one of the things we talk about, as well as we talk all the time, and we're going to be doing more, and we'll be looking for people who want to write articles or come on and do streams, because there really is a rising return of religiosity across Europe as well as places like Canada. The media doesn't want to cover it because the secular media is basically atheist media. Their excuse is they don't want to talk about religion because that offends people, but they're increasingly noting that it offends people to not be able to talk about religion too. And so we're seeing a rising tide of independent voices in media who are, well, I think true seculars. I mean, I truly believe this is a secular effort right here. Red Pill Religion, this whole team here is a secular effort, and everything I've described, because we are not Christian apologists. I mean, if that happens along the way because someone's asking questions, great, but we're here to engage the culture broadly as people who are spiritual, because we have every right to have a full voice. We get to share in the secularism. In fact, we invented the secularism. Give it back. That's kind of our attitude. And yeah, you might have noticed we have a very take no prisoners approach. We're very confrontational, and we use crass language. Know why? We're not a ministry, and that's a warning for any Christians or others who get upset. Well, we use the kind of language that millennials use in the mainstream media. So 4-letter words do come out of our mouths, and if that disturbs you, don't come by. So there you go.
I think Stephanie would like to say something. Stephanie?
Her podcast, we've just taken it over.
Yeah, we don't want to take over her show. Hey, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Stephanie, you appear to have no microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes, we
yeah,
can
we
hear
can hear you.
Oops, I had the wrong button pushed. Okay. So what I wanted to say is that I really appreciate having you all on, and it's we all have had these experiences, and I think social media has opened many of our eyes to some of the different things that are going on out there. But there is a way to kind of keep some of this positive and just focus on maybe some of the arguments that you've had on Twitter or anything like that with atheists that have. I mean, have you ever changed an atheist's mind on Twitter with any of these arguments, like the moral argument or the cosmological argument or the teleological? Are any of those effective, or is there another means that you think might have been more helpful?
Oh no, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that what we've done is exactly right. It's contrary to what most Christians would think you should do, which is to be nice and show. But confronting people on stupidity, I'm finding young men especially respond to that. What are you, stupid? And that just sounds so wrong. Although if you look in the scriptures, there's salt and good cheer and suffer. What's the word? Something about fools and suffering, not suffering fools unless they think themselves wise. What we've seen is a number of people who were. We've seen a number of people revert who had left the faith. We've seen a number of people who were atheists definitely waver and become a lot more agnostic and a lot more chill especially because we tend to have this abrasive approach, but then if somebody takes off the gloves and wants to have a conversation, we often have fun conversations. And so, no, we're going to probably be we are going to be softening our tone somewhat. We've already been working on that, but there really is something to
yeah, and just to sort of riff off of that. Are you done, Max?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've talked to maybe half a dozen people who have either returned to the faith or become Christians based on their testimony, partially by watching me on Twitter. And the two things that sort of keep in my mind is the person you talk to directly is not the person who's going to be affected by your argument.
Yeah,
it's always going to be it's going to be someone else. And the other point that I was going to make is oftentimes the thing that they just need to see is that you can be a rational, reasonable, scientific, loving, nerdy person and be spiritual as well, and be a Christian. And then the third thing is. Atheism is not actually a belief or a lack of belief. It's not an intellectual position. It's a disorientation of the human spirit. And so if you're already receptive to these arguments, you'll probably go and read like Edward Fazer's book or thing by C. Stephen Evans or C.S. Lewis, and you will look at that argument and it will be compelling to you because you're already orienting your spirit towards finding the truth. And that's actually been one of the more shocking things I've seen with at least some atheists is they literally say they deny that they're looking for truth. And if you're not going to look for truth, you can't find God because God is truth.
Well, I can say personally that hanging around Red Pill Religion and being a part of this group has helped strengthen my Catholic faith. I was raised Catholic, but during my teen years, I started to drift away from that. And I am very happy that I am returning to this faith, and I'm still in the process of really trying to commit myself. I've been reading a lot of literature that Max has recommended to me, like The Secrets of Mary, and it's been, yeah, it is, and it's been a, and I've also, hey Max, I've recently gotten that 33 Days to Morning Glory book.
Oh, I'll be happy to do the consecration with you, brother, if you do it. I love it. That changed my life.
Yeah, you'll have to show me how to do it afterwards. But the point, this I guess you could call this is not ministry or apologetics, not directly. It's more of an icebreaker. I would say it helps break through a lot because there are some people who, when you try to talk to them about this sort of thing, they just throw a wall up, and it's just or it just goes through one ear and out the other. But the indirect approach we do interests people, and it causes them to become more receptive to certain. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to add that we talk about completely non-standard stuff. For example, ask me if I think ghosts are real. The answer is yes. Ask me if I think demons are real. The answer is yes. And it's surprising how often people are very interested in those conversations about things like that, independent of religion, because, by the way, there's all kinds of rational reasons to believe that things like demons and ghosts are real, and UFOs are an interesting phenomenon to talk to and how they play into that. By the way, did you know that believing Christians never have alien encounters? And so that there's some reason to believe that alien encounters are actually demonic encounters. Just one of the many interesting things we like to talk about, because this, we can tell you things like, we talk with pagans about things that they know, and that's fascinating too. I mean, there's so much to explore, and actually the secular climate out there, has turned into an atheist climate and drained of all human spirituality. I startle some Christians and some atheists by saying, oh my God, if you're going to be an atheist, please read Nietzsche. You'll at least be interesting. Or please become a Stoic and get into the Stoic religion. I'll pay you if you restart the Stoic religion. Just to give me somebody interesting to talk to, because, oh my God, this godless culture is just so sucked of any spiritual oxygen. You know what I mean, guys?
I do
exactly.
agree with that. Oh, we just all had the same thought at the same time.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's we also talk. I think Max also talks about nerd stuff on once a week.
Oh yeah, sure. We even have this role-playing game we're doing. Andrew is the game master, and we're going to be playing again on Sunday, tomorrow, I guess. I think, and Godless Cranium said he's going to join us, and I think we're going to have Todd Lewis and a few others on. And we're just doing a lot on the Red Pill Religion channel, a live stream where we have this cool world we're doing where it's sort of like the Fallout universe from video games, but not. It's just a nod to them. That's a 200 years in the future, 300 years in the future, post-apocalyptic future. The United States and Canada and Mexico have broken into a bunch of different independent nations, and religion plays a big part. We got Mormons, we got heretic Mormons, we got Aztec revivalists, we've got Catholics, we've got evangelical Protestants, and probably some atheist transhumanist villains. So it's just a live role play game we're doing, and so yeah, it's fun.
I'd like to mention something about that. A couple of things that I just found out recently, and one is I started reading a bit on Ayn Rand, and I started reading her because of a paper I'm working on for my university, and the reviewer said that I should look at Ayn Rand and Ayn Rand's view on selfishness and her view on rational thinking, what she calls rational thinking. And what's interesting is that I think you can distinguish atheists by two different camps. One camp is, I'm sure there's many camps, but it seems that there's a group that's very pro-humanist, and then there's another group that is more like an Ayn Rand sort of a group. And then, so I went into the Church of Satan just for curiosity, and happened to notice that they're also endorsing Ayn Rand's viewpoints on the merits of being selfish. So I thought I might twist the conversation a little bit into that because it's kind of interesting.
Well,
can I address this one to start? This is something that I noticed. I think I noticed this in a real big way about a year and a half ago, and I started pointing it out to others. And now, the more you point it out, the more everybody agrees. Atheists are very predictable in their politics. Atheists always wind up, they usually gravitate toward the hard political left, Marxist basically. And if they decide that doesn't work, they look around and they become libertarians, and they read either Ayn Rand or some other or they get into anarchy. The gamut of atheist political thought is very noticeable. It's either Marxism, libertarianism, or something like objectivism. And objectivism, yeah, the Church of Satan does endorse objectivism, and objectivism is a philosophy that just embraces nihilism and embraces what I would call selfishness and even cruelty, and it's actually kind of incoherent. So you can actually track, where atheists will be politically. They'll either be some sort of Marxist, soft or hard Marxist, or they'll be an objectivist and some kind of libertarian. That's just where they go.
Don't forget there are the atheists that go for the hard right, ultra nationalist, racialist.
Yeah, and the hard right, ultra nationalist, racist types. That's right. The most hard, and I don't mean people who say Trump's a white nationalist, because he's not. But no, the race realists, the ones who are still into things like eugenics and stuff like that, hardcore ones, all atheists. It's very noticeable once you see it.
There was this live stream where you had it was a very recent one. It was actually trending. I think it was number one. It was the number one trending or a big live stream on the Andy Warski channel. That had it was just all. It was noticeable because these were all atheists. You had liberal atheists. You had SJW atheists. You had libertarian atheists, you had a social, and you had Richard Spencer, who was an atheist, a racial atheist, and they were all talking complete nonsense and trying to see who was the most having a contest of who was the most intellectual of them all, and it was the whole gamut of atheist thought there. Or all you needed was an anarchist, and that's the diversity of opinion within atheist land.
Yes, and when they debate, they're basically all trying to establish who is smartest atheist, who will lead the atheist revolution. It's hilarious to watch them because they're completely without any introspection about this little bubble world they're in. Because I keep asking them, and none of them will. They all get their answers. Yeah, what are you going to do with those of us who won't be atheists with you? What are you going to do?
I think the most telling part of that live stream was when one of the atheists in there is like, "How could you not read what I've read and not come to the exact same conclusions that I did?" And that's literally that is the. I think it was Sargon of Akkad who actually said that. He was like, how could you read Thomas Paine and not come to all the conclusions that I did? Which was agreeing 100% with whatever Thomas Paine said.
And that's because atheists, except for the weird ones who just, go into nothing really makes sense and they're total sophists or solipsists, what they always wind up doing, they decide human reason is the most important facility. There's Ayn Rand for you, by the way, enthroning reason and rationality, and of course, inevitably, it comes from that whatever opinions you've arrived at, if you can't be dissuaded, you must be right, and everybody else must be wrong. So you tumble into this abyss of being eternally right about everything and mad that the world doesn't agree with you. It happens with all atheists, apparently, especially those who make it so central to their identity.
I don't understand this fascination with Ayn Rand, by the way. How can you even be interested in this kind of idea of selfishness? I said it before on Twitter. To me, Ayn Rand is in the same category as Mein Kampf of Hitler. How can you be a Democrat? How can you be a decent human being and believe in these sorts of ideologies? So,
Ayn Rand is very popular amongst young men who are really into that kind of stuff, and they're usually attracted. And if you ever watch a video by Ayn Rand, she had a sort of unnatural charisma, and she was very popular in America because she was a hardened anti-communist. But
right.
the thing is, she went the opposite extreme. If you notice history of Christian heresies always come in pairs. One heresy is and usually one heresy is founded by making the exact opposite mistake as the other heresy.
Yeah, John
and
Baptiste, you going to say something? John Baptiste?
Yeah, it was mostly about Ayn Rand. Well, with how it sucks young men, how Ayn Rand's work sucks young men, and I blame Atlas Shrugged in the subsequent book after that. I mean, she wrote one other book that is mostly known, but she's known for 3 books. She wrote like about 5, and one of them was a uh kind of a philosophy that didn't really work, objectivism. But it seems to be like the people that really get into Ayn Rand are the anarcho-capitalists. They call themselves libertarians, but I'm on the firm ground that, you know, if you're in America, you call people who believe in the Constitution that we should at least try to, because that's the best we got so far. We should at least try to make it work. You know, the people that call those people status, that's not that was extreme back when I actually did.
Yeah, the bottom line is these are all godless philosophies, and once you realize you can categorize the godless philosophies and you can categorize and describe the godless reasoning train, it completely changes how you see all this, and it becomes obvious. Why do they get into it? I think I said it before. They decide Marxism is BS. They figure out economically that doesn't work, and some of the ideology doesn't work, so they start searching. And in fact, I have good reason to believe that cultural Marxists like to pitch objectivists at people who are questioning them, because it keeps them atheist and keeps them in the mix.
Yes, but selfishness from an evolutionary point of view actually kills our society. We aren't cats, we aren't solitary animals, we're social animals. So if we can't work together, we're not going to survive. So any philosophy that is based on individualism is basically doomed to die out. So this is why
there's individualism, and then there's autistic individualism, which is basically what Ayn Rand is. There's respecting individual rights and freedoms, and then there's saying that man is a self-created being, which is what Ayn Rand literally said. She said there is a God, and the God is I, which is basically the individual is their own God in Ayn Rand's world. There's just no. In fact, I actually have a great book I'd recommend. John Zamarek's Bad Catholic's Guide to the 7 Deadly Sins. He lists Ayn Rand as the perfect example of vainglory, because her entire philosophy is essentially that man is your individual self is the ultimate being, and she calls that rational.
And your success and your worth as a man is based on your success in life.
And if you read Ayn Rand's stories, you'll notice that there are no families. There's no children in those stories. All the women are steely-eyed careerists who are all really masculine up until the point where the male protagonist rapes them, and then it's all very.
Yes, he's right. The only mother figure in the book is malevolent. What's his name? John Galt's mother, Howard Rourke's mother. I'm getting the names wrong, but yeah, they get into it because they are avoiding religion or being diverted away from religion. And,
yes, but even a career is impossible without other people, because you can think that your career is just your own, but it's never just your own. Anyone who works in the corporate world knows that it's always teamwork. So even if you benefit from the work of other people.
I think this is something worth pointing out, is that polarity that Buckley was just talking about there. Really, truly, I've said this for 10 years. I noticed this even when I was an atheist, that Ayn Rand is basically like the Bizarro from Superman, like the Bizarro Marxism. She's just the opposite of everything. She's the atheist who's just the opposite of all things Marxist. It's parallel. In reality, Christianity, or at least a broadly God-centered philosophy, whether it's Christian or something else, is actually a political moderating and stabilizing force. Because we as Christians can all look at this and say, no, rabid individualism isn't healthy, and rabid collectivism is not healthy either. You need a balance between those two. And that's just intuitively obvious to everybody here, I would imagine. And atheists can't seem to get it. It's really funny.
Yeah, so I apologize for interrupting, but I actually have to log off pretty quick here.
I'm going to have to go soon, too.
Well, I can stay on.
Yep, or we can start wrapping, whatever you want, Stephanie. I can stay for another 5 minutes or so.
I think let's see if we'll go towards 5 o'clock, and then we'll cut it off at that point. How about that?
Sounds good.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Excellent.
So I think a lot of what Ayn Rand, I think the most telling part about Ayn Rand met the original William F. Buckley, by the way, back in the 50s and 60s.
She says, "You are too smart to believe in God." That's what she actually said to him. But anyway.
Yeah. And in response, he wrote a hit. He had an ex-communist named Whittaker Chambers write a hit piece on her book, which is called "Big Sister is Watching," and reportedly she cried when she read that hit piece on her because because the pinnacle of rationality couldn't handle being criticized.
Is it really a hit piece if it told the truth though?
Well, a hit piece, in my opinion, is a character attack, whether it tells the truth about the character or not. I just refer to that broadly as a hit piece. And that book, it was very informative a piece, but it talked about her. It talked about her politics and how divorced it was from reality. It talked about how utopian and crazy her place was, and it also pointed out how in the book there were no children. It was not It was not a family friendly book. I think William F. Buckley actually called it 1,000 pages of fantabulism. That her book
wasn't the Objectivist Party founded while Ayn Rand was still alive?
Well, it wasn't a political party. It was more of a cult, actually. It was more like a cult of personality, the Objectivist movement. In fact, other libertarians who dissented with Ayn Rand on certain issues, she would just kick them out. And William F. Buckley had her written out of the right wing because of how toxic her form of libertarianism was to the conservative movement. He also had written out a bunch of people like the John Birch Society and others.
Oh, and by the way, you will notice that a lot of those objectivist influential Republicans came back and were part of the neocons, who are now being kind of ousted from the Republican Party. Isn't that interesting? Atheism influences our politics all the way to the top.
I still remember her. I still remember Paul Ryan, who is supposedly a Catholic, going around saying that Ayn Rand was his greatest inspiration. I'm like, dude, you haven't even read. You probably haven't ever read her. Being charitable, you're probably just a dunce who has never read her and just kind of likes her economics. That's true. Most people a lot of Christians who read Ayn Rand just kind of are conservatives, just kind of like her economic policy, but don't really like. But we're all turned off. But all the conservatives are turned off by her godlessness, her cultishness, her there's always somebody, something about her that just turned people off. So yeah, that's Ayn Rand for you. She was kind of crazy.
It is amazing, though, the way that she has influenced a lot of things. And I know I read her book 20 years ago or so. I read all of her books. I read Fountainhead and Anthem and Atlas Shrugged, of course. And those have influenced politics. And now I look back on that and I can see, especially when I was directed to look at her stuff again from this reviewer, is how it relates to even ethics. Because the reason this reviewer told me to go to Ayn Rand was because there's a multidimensional ethics scale that contains things like utilitarianism and relativism. And what's really interesting is it also contains egoism. And so I just never really thought about that so much, but that's exactly what Ayn Rand stands for. So,
well, I would argue,
and ultimately, I would focus on the godlessness. The godlessness is what warps and characterizes every level of that philosophy.
I would argue that most atheist ethics tend to boil down into egoism, or at least degenerate into egoism in the long run.
Yes, because some of the social justice warriors are atheists, and they feel they have a lot of solidarity with all sorts of groups, so they wouldn't consider themselves egotists. But when you look at their lives, which are over hedonistic in nature, you could say that privately sometimes they just think about themselves, but mostly they'll say, well, I'm not an egotist, I'm socially involved, I donate to charity, I fight against racism, etc.
Well, they do all of that because it helps them. They do all of that. I don't want to disparage all atheists who donate to charity, but but it's not. Oftentimes, that activism is motivated by this. I think there's a great verse in the Bible that says, "I could speak the language of angels, but without love, it sounds like the clanging of bells." Something like that, and that is essentially the social justice warriors. They are the social justice warriors, especially because they go around talking about morality and all these oppressed groups, but they are godless, and so it just is clanging bells. It's kind of like the Pharisees who proclaim that, oh, look at me, I'm doing all these wonderful things. How could I be such a bad person and when I do all these horrible things?
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go. We gotta finish it.
Well, another point that you could point to, since we're talking about the godlessness and everything, you look at like Ayn Rand stuff, right? It seems she was very much, a morality is subjective type of person. That seems to be a common thread among all the godless people. And as far as the charity organizations, how many charity organizations that are, that claim to be atheists actually do anything but teach about atheism? Just a question.
Yeah, no.
Well, when you look at some social justice warriors, because I know quite many of them, they can be extremely generous and extremely involved in all sorts of projects, and that is very admirable. But when you look at their personal lives, you see a lot of single mothers, you see a lot of people living together, having little time for their own children. You see people divorcing. So, yes, they have some good intentions, and you should give it to that. You should certainly appreciate that. But on the other hand, they lack the principles, I think, that religious people have. The way that we lead our lives, we have a certain set of values which we follow, and which the social justice warriors, especially the atheist ones, don't have. So they will do some positive things, but at the same time, they will still remain in this hedonistic mindset.
Well,
But this is different from the Ayn Rand fans, of course. Huh? This is a totally different type of atheist.
But they hang out together a lot, I've noticed. They tend to be friends because they bond on their godlessness. So is that a good note to end on? Or?
That's a good note. I wanted to say something really fast before we end officially is I wanted to say shout out to all of the people who are on the live chat right now, because I see quite a few people that we all know. I see Craig right there. I see Doc, Abraham Holy Terror. I'm not sure if we've interacted on Twitter. I see Keskron. I've seen Heather and Cindy and Peter. And who else do we have here? Cameron Gilchrist, whom I haven't seen on Twitter in ages. He disappeared last May, if I recall correctly. And so it's wonderful to see all of you. Nicholas Carrington, I see Lisa Manchiavelli, or Manchialevi. So we've got another great group of people. And so thank you all. And if I didn't mention your name, I'm sorry. I don't see you right in front. Oh, Jen with one N is here too. Wonderful. So Jen with one N and I are going to have a conversation next week. So I really appreciate everyone coming on, and I appreciate all of you joining us and listening in. And we want to keep doing these conversations and keep having more conversations, and even involve sometimes bringing atheists on the show to chat about their views on things. And I did want to mention something that some people said in the chat, that they don't agree with Ayn Rand. So just because you're atheist doesn't mean you agree with Ayn Rand's philosophy on selfishness. I think there is a distinct group of people who are humanists who probably will end up making their way up the stairs to God at some point. That's my personal viewpoint. But would everyone like to say goodbye? You want to say goodbye and we'll sign off?
Well, thanks, everybody. God bless, and Ave Maria.
Ave. Ave.
Bye-bye, Ave Maria.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And thank you all of you for joining us today. And you can find us again at christianapologist.com, christian-apologist.com if you'd like to read a blog and read a few blogs and go into that. And so thank you, all of you. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out.